You thought that enlightening your soul meant finding peace, but what you found was a profound silence, an emptiness no one prepared you to feel. Rumi said, "Light enters where the heart has broken." But what nobody told you? It's just that sometimes, when the light finally shines through, it doesn't bring warmth. It reveals everything that was hidden inside you. You've enlightened your soul, but why do you still feel lost? Maybe you did what many try. You meditated. You cried in silence. You read about healing. You sought answers. Maybe he delved into himself trying to understand the pain, the emptiness, the scars, and for an instant he felt something different, as if I had woken up, but then everything got denser, more lonely, more confusing. This is the spiritual paradox that no one talks about. The awakening of the soul doesn't always bring light. Sometimes it extinguishes all the old candles. You start to question everything. Who you are. What do you want? Why do you feel so much, even though you're trying to do everything right? And the truth? It's just that awakening is a mourning for who you thought you were. You stop identifying with the old, but you still don't know how to inhabit the new. It's like walking down a dark corridor between two worlds, and in that space everything seems silent. You look around and see people going about their lives as if everything makes sense, but inside you, something doesn't fit. You no longer fit in the same places. You no longer believe in the same promises. And then comes the question that echoes in the soul. Is there something wrong with me? No, it does not have. What you are experiencing is sacred, but nobody prepared you for this. Nobody warned you that spiritual healing hurts too, that enlightening yourself can make you more sensitive, more vulnerable, more aware of everything you've avoided for so long. Nobody told you that the soul awakens, but the body still feels, that the heart tries to keep up but stumbles on memories, absences, expectations that still insist on living inside you. You're not lost. You're just on the threshold, the space between the old and the real, between what you were and what is now being born within you. But it's hard, isn't it? Because now you see everything, see the emotional patterns. Look at the relationships that don't nourish you. See the places where your soul is not welcome. And also see the loneliness of realizing that almost no one understands what you are going through. You feel out of place, as if I were in another time, more connected, more sensitive, quieter. And then comes the fear. Am I regressing? Have I lost my way? No, you just stripped yourself of illusions. And now your soul no longer accepts being dressed in lies. The truth is that spiritual awakening is an internal earthquake. He dismantles false certainties. He breaks the ancient mirrors and leaves you face to face with the one thing that never changes. You. Its essence. But this part of the path, this dark, silent, lonely part, it's the hardest, because no one can cross it for you. And this is precisely where many give up. They believe they made a mistake, that they failed, but in truth, they were closer than ever. Rumi said, "The soul has its own way of understanding. When it is silent, it is because it is listening to something that the mind does not yet understand." You feel it now, don't you? This silence, this confusion, that feeling of being adrift. It's the whisper of your soul, asking you not to give up, because there is a hidden key at this moment. And maybe it is now, just now. May you be closer to finding her, and perhaps you've never heard it so clearly. Maybe no one told you that feeling lost after enlightening your soul is not a mistake. It's part of the journey, and if this is happening to you now, it means that the light has begun to reveal everything that needs to be released. That's why, comment below, "I'm going through my own dark night of the soul." If this video spoke to you in any way, put it into words, because when you write, you anchor, and when you anchor, you start to truly listen to yourself. This is more than a video. It's a mirror. It is a sacred space for souls who have awakened and feel confused about it. So before we continue, leave your like. This helps this content reach other souls who are also wandering in silence. If you are someone who feels there is something beyond the obvious, something deep, subtle, sacred, then this space is yours. Subscribe to Whispers of Rumi. Here, each video is a key to open doors you didn't even know existed within you. If you are at this point between what was and what is being born, know this: you are not alone. Take a deep breath, because what comes next, it will touch exactly what you have been trying to hide from yourself. You thought that after healing, clarity would come, but all you found was a new layer of silence, a confusion that seems even deeper, and this scares you, because you believed that by illuminating your soul, everything would make sense. The pain would lessen, your thoughts would calm, and your heart would find a way back home. But what happened was the opposite. You looked within, faced your ghosts, reconnected with your essence, and yet, something remains restless. A spiritual void that can't be filled with either answers or certainty. It's as if you're caught between two worlds. The old one no longer belongs to you. The masks have fallen. The illusions have lost their shine. But the new hasn't yet arrived firmly. You feel like you're in transit, an invisible crossing between who you were and who you still don't know how to be. And along the way, everything seems dark, silent, and lonely. You realize you're no longer the version of yourself who accepted emotional scraps, who sacrificed herself for love, who lost herself to be seen. But you also still can't fully inhabit this new version that's emerging, because it's fragile, because it's learning to walk, because it still fears being rejected again. This is the invisible problem that almost no one talks about, the space between pain and freedom, the gap between trauma and true healing, the silent zone where your soul has awakened, but your mind still tries to control. You rationally understand that you are in a spiritual process, that this deconstruction is necessary, that there is a greater purpose behind it all. But understanding doesn't stop you from feeling lost. And that's when the pain returns, not as a scream but as an uncomfortable whisper. Have you ever felt this way? Like you're doing everything right, but still feel wrong inside? Like the people around you don't understand what you've been through, nor what you're trying to become? It's as if your soul is trying to breathe in a world that only understands appearances. You realize your sensitivity has increased, your limits have changed. Certain environments, conversations, and even people have started to drain you, and this confronts you with a new pain, that of walking away from what you love, so as not to lose yourself again. This process is cruel for those who feel deeply, for those who love intensely, for those who have been hurt trying to be a light in someone's world. Because now, your soul wants peace, but your body still holds memories. Your mind still searches for explanations, and your heart still bleeds silently, not knowing how to fit into this new time. You're not alone in this. Many awaken and then get lost, because the world wasn't made to welcome conscious souls. It prefers distracted, predictable people, stuck in patterns. And when you start to break out of this, you realize you'll have to walk for a while without applause, without clear direction, without anyone to hold your hand. It's at this point that the soul begins to rebel against all that is superficial. You try to return to your old comfort zone, but it no longer serves you. Conversations feel empty. Relationships without reciprocity scream too loudly, and you begin to long for silence. Not the silence of pain, but the silence of the soul. The silence that heals. The silence that connects. The silence where, finally, you can hear yourself unfiltered. But the problem is that by entering this silence, you begin to confront the parts of yourself you don't want to see yet. The part that still seeks validation. The part that fears being forgotten. The part that doubts its own light. And all of this happens deep within your soul, while on the outside you continue smiling, responding to messages, fulfilling commitments, as if everything were fine. This disconnect between what you feel and what you show is what's making you sickest right now. Because it's no longer about seeking external approval. It's about recognizing yourself internally, giving yourself permission to be who you're becoming, even if you don't know what it's called yet, even if no one understands, even if it hurts. The truth is, spiritual awakening doesn't solve your emotional problems. It amplifies everything. Because now you see clearly where the knots were, where you were too silent, where you abandoned yourself, where you believed you needed to be less to be loved. And seeing all this through the eyes of the soul is brutal, but it's also liberating. So, if you feel like you're living in this silent confusion, this space between what you've left behind and what hasn't arrived yet, know that you're on the path. A path that isn't linear, that has no maps, that can't be explained logically, but that somehow is leading you back home, inward. Right here in the comments, I'm between two worlds, but I still listen to my soul. Because this phrase could be the first step toward realizing that you're no longer lost. You're just truly waking up. What no one told you is that awakening isn't the end of pain. In fact, it's the beginning of a much more subtle and profound pain. the pain of losing everything you believed you were, the pain of moving away from what distracted you, the pain of looking within and realizing that, for so long, you were trying to save yourself through others, the pain of seeing clearly that your most persistent suffering was fueled by something you refused to let go of, your ego. And we're not talking about the inflated, arrogant, superficial ego. No, we're talking about the spiritual ego, the one that has learned to hide behind pretty phrases, enlightened gestures, and soft words, but that deep down still seeks control, acceptance, security, and recognition. The ego that wants to awaken, but doesn't want to die, that wants to transcend, but without letting go of the past, that wants to be enlightened, but without losing its footing. Rumi said, "You have to keep breaking your heart until it opens." And what this sentence reveals is something many avoid facing, because no one wants to break their own heart again. You've been there, haven't you? You've felt your soul bleed inside. You've begged for healing. You've believed that simply understanding your pain was enough to free yourself from it. But the soul has its own timing, and it doesn't open all at once. It opens in spirals, in cycles, in silences. True awakening requires surrender, and surrender is a slow death of the layers you've built to survive. You realize that much of what you thought was light was just fear in disguise. That much of what you called love was just attachment by another name. That much of your strength came from the effort to not appear fragile. This is where many people get confused. They believe that because they're still suffering, they haven't evolved spiritually. But the truth is that this suffering that appears after awakening is a process of purification. The soul begins to expel what is no longer its own. It begins to undo old contracts, limiting beliefs, and emotional patterns that were once useful, but now only imprison it. You begin to notice that certain thoughts no longer belong to you, that certain desires, once urgent, no longer make sense, that certain places within you crave silence, crave space, crave reconnection with something that can't be explained, but beats strongly within your chest. And this is the spiritual root of your pain now. Your soul is shedding its ego. And this hurts because the ego is all you've ever known. It's how you defended yourself from the world. It's how you sought love. It's how you tried to control the uncontrollable. Without the ego, you feel naked, exposed, vulnerable, as if you've shed an ancient suit of armor and suddenly realize the weight you've carried for years. Relief comes, but with it comes fear. Fear of the new. Fear of no longer knowing who you are. Fear of no longer being able to hide. The soul awakens, but it awakens to reality. And reality isn't always pretty. It isn't always gentle. Sometimes reality is brutal. It shows you the wounds you've swept under the spiritual rug. It shows you the emotional games you still insist on playing, even though you claim to have healed. It shows you your own escape disguised as a search. But it's in that moment that transformation happens. Because when you face this pain with presence, with honesty, with compassion for yourself, something inside you begins to break differently. It's no longer a break of despair. It's a sacred break. It's the soul saying, "Now I am ready. Ready to be who you've always been, before all the masks. Ready to love without having to erase yourself. Ready to be alone without feeling empty. Ready to say no without guilt. Ready to exist without constantly justifying yourself." This pain you feel now is not a punishment. It's a calling to break out of the cycle of repetition, a calling to stop seeking outside what can only be felt within, a calling to silence the noise of the ego and hear clearly the voice of the soul. And maybe that's why you've been so sensitive lately. Maybe you've been crying without understanding why, feeling strange anguish in your chest, wanting to disappear for a while. All of this is a sign that your soul is in transition. It's asking for space to breathe slowly, to feel without judgment, to exist and without needing to defend yourself all the time. Don't ignore these signs. They are silent compasses pointing the way back to yourself. When your heart aches for no apparent reason, it's your soul opening up. When your body tires without explanation, it's your soul asking for a break. When you feel like you're unlearning how to live as you used to, it's your soul whispering that it's time to be reborn. And in this rebirth, you will no longer need to prove anything. Not to the world, not to anyone, not to yourself. You will just be. If this makes sense to you, write here in the comments, "I'm letting go of my ego so my soul can stay." Maybe this is the beginning of your true liberation. Becoming enlightened isn't about finding all the answers. It's not about having certainties, nor about feeling constant peace, nor about becoming a being untouched by human emotions. True enlightenment isn't revealed in control but in surrender. And this is the key that almost no one teaches you. Because most people talk about awakening as a happy ending, as if by touching the soul, everything magically aligns, as if awareness brings only lightness. But what no one tells you is that becoming enlightened is, in fact, learning to walk in the dark with confidence. Not because you see the path, but because you feel it's there, even without seeing it. True spiritual light doesn't blind, it reveals. And what it reveals isn't always pretty. Sometimes it illuminates the forgotten corners of your soul, those recesses you've forcefully pushed into the unconscious. It brings to the surface memories, sensations, ancestral wounds, ancient voids. And this return is brutal, because you believed you were healed, that you were ready, that you didn't need to deal with this anymore. But the soul, when awakened, has its own plans. It doesn't care about the ego's timing. It doesn't bow to the mind's expectations. It comes with force. And this force doesn't destroy. It cleanses. It purifies. Feeling lost after awakening is precisely the sign that something deep is being organized within you. It's like a spiritual cleansing. First comes chaos, then comes meaning. But in between, everything seems out of place. You question yourself constantly. You doubt even what was once your foundation. People leave. Cycles close. Strange sensations appear. And the mind, desperate for logic, tries to resist. It tries to return to what was. It tries to find explanations. But no explanation satisfies. Because it's no longer about logic. It's about intuition. It's about learning to listen to what has no words. To feel what cannot be touched. You're not confused because something went wrong. You're confused because something deep inside is becoming unstructured. And the soul, when it frees itself from false paths, triggers this kind of silent earthquake. Old structures tremble. The roles you've assumed for survival crumble. Masks begin to weigh you down. What was once automatic now demands awareness. What once seemed normal now suffocates you. And that's frightening. But it's also liberating. Because finally, you're getting closer to who you truly are. This bridge between who you were and who you're becoming isn't a comfortable place. It's a non-place. You haven't arrived yet, but you also no longer belong to what you left behind. It's like being between two worlds. The old calls to you with promises of safety. The new still has no form, no name. It exists only as a sensation, a vibration, a presence. And that's why the mind goes crazy, because it can't control the invisible. But that's precisely where the hidden key reveals itself, when you stop seeking control and start trusting the flow. This trust isn't born of reason, it's born of surrender. From the daily repetition of a subtle and powerful gesture, remaining even without knowing, remaining even when afraid, remaining even in silence. Because there's something inside you that knows, that recognizes, that feels. And it's this part, not the mind, but the soul, that begins to guide the journey from here. But to hear this part, you need to silence the noise. You need to embrace the emptiness. You need to stop running from the confusion and start listening to it. Because the confusion has a message. It's trying to say, don't fight it, trust it. What's coming is greater than what you understand now. The soul has a different timing than the external world. While the world demands haste, it demands pause. While the world demands performance, it demands presence. While the world focuses on results, the soul seeks meaning. And in this contrast, the pain of awakening arises. You want to follow the flow of the soul, but you're still trapped by the demands of the old world. That's why you feel lost, because you're trying to walk with your feet on two different terrains. But sooner or later you'll have to choose, and this choice won't be rational. It will be vibrational. The soul will move, and you will simply know, without needing to understand. When this surrender happens, something magical begins to emerge. It's not an explosion of light, it's a new silence, a kind of emptiness that doesn't hurt. It welcomes. A kind of darkness that doesn't scare. It comforts. Because now, you're no longer fighting the invisible. You're dancing with it. And it's in this dance that your true light begins to shine. Not like a desperate flashlight wanting to reveal everything, but like a silent, steady, constant ember that warms, guides, sustains. This is the key many seek outside, in books, courses, and teachers. But it has always been within, and it can only be accessed when you accept the emptiness with presence, when you stop trying to understand and begin to simply feel. The soul doesn't shout, it whispers, and you will only hear it when you are willing to listen to what is unsaid. If this is vibrating inside you right now, if something here spoke to parts of you that you didn't even know existed, write in the comments, "I am trusting in the crossing." This phrase could be the beginning of a new way of being in the world, a lighter, truer, more personal way. Maybe you're going through exactly this right now. Maybe you've come this far after a long journey, after a long search, after a long giving of yourself to the world, hoping on some level that it would fulfill you. You've already done what many haven't even begun. You've delved into self-discovery books, sought answers from masters, wept silently before texts that touched something deep within you. You've allowed yourself to break because you knew something needed to be rebuilt. You've tried to meditate even with a restless mind. You've tried to forgive even without being understood. You've tried to let go even feeling stuck. And yet, even after all this journey, you still wake up some days with an empty chest. And it's not just any void. It's a different void than before. It's not the same hole that came from neediness, from the absence of the other, from rejection. It's a deeper void, an inner space where everything has become quieter, where the old voices no longer scream, but where there are still no clear answers. It's as if something inside you is preparing, gestating, transforming, but unhurriedly. And you, accustomed to seeking meaning in everything, begin to doubt yourself. You begin to wonder if you've taken the wrong path. You begin to fear you've lost your way. But what's happening to you now is sacred. It's rare. It's the soul asking for silence. Before, it was easier to get distracted. There were unresolved loves that filled your days with expectations. There were cycles of pain where you already knew how to hurt. There were immediate desires that masked the wound. There was the adrenaline of feeling needed, desired, useful. There was the false security of always doing something, even if it meant depriving yourself. But not anymore. Now, after everything you've accessed internally, those places no longer serve you. Those distractions have lost their flavor. External promises tire you, and what's left is you with you. And that, at first, is frightening. It's scary because you never learned to truly listen to yourself, because for so long you were confused by the pain you carried, by the emptiness you tried to fill, by the roles you played to be accepted. And now, faced with so much silence, you need to reconnect with parts of yourself that have been silenced for years. The part that feels too much. The part that wanted to scream but couldn't. The part that knew but was disbelieved. The part that dreamed but was put off. This phase of the journey is profoundly delicate because it seems stagnant, but it's in motion. Because it seems dark, but it's where the new light shines. Because it seems lonely, but it's where true self-love begins to emerge. But for those who have always lived in search, in urgency, in emotional turmoil, this initial piece is frightening. It gives the impression that something is wrong, that life has lost its color, that you're numb. But no, you're simply in the interim. And in this interim, your soul breathes. Maybe you feel distant from others, as if no one understands you anymore, as if shallow conversations bother you, as if even touch becomes more sensitive. You start to want to retreat, not out of sadness, but for protection. You start to avoid noisy places, not out of isolation, but because your soul is asking for stillness. You start to lose patience with everything superficial, with everything that lacks truth, with everything that forces you to return to being who you are no longer. And this creates an internal estrangement, because you begin to realize that it's no longer about understanding the pain, but about moving through it. It's no longer about seeking answers outside, but about allowing silence to reveal what needs to be revealed. And this allowing is where many give up, because it's not passive. It requires courage. It requires presence. It requires spiritual maturity. The soul craves silence, because in silence, it rebuilds you. It cleanses you of emotional excess. It rescues you from the traps of the mind. It reminds you that you simply are, effortlessly, without struggle, without comparison. And this reminder doesn't come as a slap. It comes like a breeze that, little by little, begins to sweep away the debris of what you thought you needed to be. And perhaps if you stop to feel now, in this very moment, you'll realize that the fear you feel isn't of being lost. It's the fear of finally finding yourself. Because finding yourself means abandoning everything you've built to be loved. It means accepting that your light is silent, that your strength is serene, that your truth doesn't need to shout, and that, in a world of noise, is revolutionary. But there is no other way. You already know this, because you've tried all the others. And now, all that's left for you is to surrender. Surrender to the invisible, trust in what still has no name, and allow your soul to guide you through this new territory, a territory where time is different, where value lies in presence, where the sacred is revealed in the little things. If this part of the video touched something that you can't explain with words, but that you felt in your whole body, write in the comments, "I am learning to trust the silence of my soul." Maybe it's this phrase that starts to open up a new space within you. But listen to this carefully. With your soul, not your mind. You are not lost. You are undressing. You are peeling back one by one the layers of everything you thought you needed to be to deserve love, respect, attention, value. You are letting go of the masks you wore to fit into expectations that were never yours. You are letting go of the weight of carrying stories that no longer belong to your truth. What you feel now, this emptiness that frightens you, this confusion that seems endless, this feeling of being caught between two worlds, is not a mistake. It is the beginning of a turning point. It is the beginning of a new listening process, a silent listening process, internal, sacred. You're stopping looking outside and finally starting to listen within, and that changes everything. Because for so long, all you did was chase answers from external voices, in books, in videos, in beautiful words, in people who seemed more evolved. You wanted to understand your pain through others. You wanted someone to explain to you why your soul ached so much, even when everything seemed to be in place. But now something has changed. You're beginning to realize that no answer from outside will be enough if there isn't an echo within, if there isn't enough silence to feel the resonance of what is true. This shift in consciousness is subtle. Sometimes you don't even realize it's begun. It doesn't come with fireworks. It doesn't arrive with glaring certainties. It appears as a different kind of weariness, a desire to stop pretending, a desire to no longer negotiate your peace. You begin to notice that you no longer want to win arguments, that you no longer want to be right, that you no longer want to be seen at any cost. Because now, what matters is being whole, being honest with yourself, being real with your soul. Even if it makes you seem strange to the world, Rumi reveals, what you seek is also seeking you. And this phrase holds a profound secret, because perhaps you spent years searching for love, belonging, recognition, meaning. Perhaps you did everything to be chosen. Perhaps you lost yourself trying to be needed in someone's life. But what you didn't realize is that, while you were searching, you were already being searched. That everything your soul yearned for was also yearning for you. That the true love you so desperately desired could only be found when you returned to yourself. When you stopped running and began allowing yourself to be found, you begin to understand, at this stage, that the universe responds not to your haste, but to your vibration. That the soul moves not by effort, but by presence. And the more you say goodbye to old versions of yourself, the more space you open for the new to approach. This transformation is not mental, it's energetic. You begin to attract silences that heal you, people who respect you, situations that reflect you, not because you forced it, but because you became it. You are no longer seeking fulfillment. You are remembering that you are already whole. And that's precisely why the previous chaos was necessary, because it was necessary to dismantle everything false before allowing the true to emerge. It was necessary to disorganize what was trapped, to release what was repressed. It was necessary for you to feel this emptiness, to realize that behind it there is fullness, and this fullness has no form, no color, no name, but it pulses, it inhabits you, it waits for you within your own silence. You begin to notice small miracles, moments when time slows down, when your mind quiets, when your heart no longer needs to protect itself. You look at the world with clearer eyes. You see the pain of others with more compassion. You feel like you no longer need to defend yourself from everything, and that's a relief that can't be explained, because for the first time, you feel like you can simply be. Be with lightness, be with truth, be with soul. You no longer need to run. You no longer need to prove. You no longer need to control, because something inside you knows, with a certainty not born of the mind, that everything that is yours is already on the path, that the encounter happens when you stop searching with your eyes and start feeling with your soul, that life organizes itself with precision when you align with your truth, that healing is not a destination, but a state of presence. And even if the world around you remains chaotic, you remain. Even if the answers don't all come at once, you breathe. Even if old pains try to visit you, you welcome them. Because now you know that no pain is stronger than the soul that has chosen to remain awake. And this awareness, this inner peace, this new way of existing, however fragile at first, is what sustains you. So if you feel that this change has already begun within you, if something here has touched deep places that were dormant, write in the comments. I allow myself to be found by my own soul. Maybe this simple gesture is your silent turning point. Maybe this is the sign your soul needed to keep going. If you've made it this far, it wasn't by chance. Your soul recognized something along this path. Maybe it whispered in the middle of the video. Maybe it screamed silently. But if you stayed until the end, it's because something inside you is ready to take the next step. And if you felt that connection, subscribe to the channel, not just to follow the next videos, but to walk with me in this space where the soul is heard, where pain is welcomed, and where silence has a voice. If this video touched you, leave your like. This shows the universe and me that you are vibrating at that same frequency. And now, watch the next video that is appearing on the screen, because the journey doesn't end here. She's just getting started, and your soul knows exactly the way. Trust her.